In every part of the world there are traces of demons. Whether they be formalized as a part of our recorded history, or simply passed down by word of mouth from one generation to the next, demonic entities are claimed to be everywhere. Traditionally, demons are thought of as ancient spirits who were once semi-divine. Now demoted, these beings are often described as using their limitless supernatural power for evil, performing trickery of all sorts, and shape-shifting in an attempt to cause mankind's downfall. Invisible yet ever present, they are whispered to lurk in every corner of human history. It could be said that they are as much a part of our story as we are. With that in mind, here are 5 of the most terrifying demons encountered in history. Far from being confined to the darker ages of history, accounts of demonic possession and exorcism are still recorded in the modern day. Yet, they are not entirely what you might expect. Whilst religious figures no doubt take the lead in the performance of an exorcism, medical professionals like physicians and psychiatrists have a role to play as well. One figure who is more than experienced in this field is Dr. Richard Gallagher, an Ivy League-educated, board-certified psychiatrist. A self-described consultant on demonic possessions, Gallagher has spent the past 3 decades helping members of the clergy distinguish between mental illness and true cases of demonic possession. Yes, Dr. Gallagher, a man of science, ardently believes that humans can indeed be possessed by demonic forces. Although rare, he states that there are confirmed cases of what he describes as the real thing. It was in the late 1980s that Gallagher became involved in one such case. Although never afraid of what he experienced, the case certainly left an impression on Gallagher. It was, after all, one of his first cases. When discussing it in a series of articles in 2016 and 17, he described what he witnessed as not only creepy, but beyond anything that he could explain with his scientific training. His patient was a middle-aged woman who described herself as Satan's queen. A member of an underground organization, she was wearing flowing dark clothing and black eyeshadow when Gallagher first met her. She herself claimed, under attack by a demon. Despite willingly aligning herself with demonic forces as the self-styled Queen of the King of Hell, the lady, whom Gallagher refers to as Julia, wanted to be free of the devil. She was conflicted, Gallagher explained in an interview. There was a part of her that wanted to be relieved of the possession. In order to help the lady, Gallagher assisted the priest in assembling a team for an exorcism. One June evening, he and a small group of nuns and priests met Julia in the chapel of a house. Despite it being warm outside, a chill is said to have gripped the room. Over the course of the evening, Julia demonstrated knowledge of personal details relating to Gallagher's life. She revealed the secret weaknesses of those present in the room. She even knew how individuals she had never known had died, including the doctor's mother. Even more disturbing was how Julia spoke in multiple languages, including Latin, during her exorcisms. Outside of her trances, these different languages were completely unfamiliar to her. Knowledge of multiple languages is a trait of demonic interference, Gallagher has claimed. From his experiences, he believes that demons are extremely bright, more so than humans, with them having the ability to speak all languages. Talking of Julia's abilities, the psychiatrist has expressed certainty that this was not psychosis. It was, he has stated, a clear sign that she was possessed by at least one demon. In addition to possessing hidden knowledge, Julia also appeared to be the epicenter of a demonic form of physical energy. Throughout the sessions, objects flew off the shelves around her. When holy water was sprinkled on her, she screamed in pain. Ultimately, despite the best efforts of Gallagher and the rest of the team, Julia's story did not have a happy ending. One day, she called a halt to the sessions. Her willingness to reject the devil was, it seems, gone. She instead chose to embrace the darkness. The last contact Gallagher had with Satan's queen was about 1 year later. She told him that she was chronically ill. When he offered to help her again, she rebuffed him. The psychiatrist says that he never heard from her again. The demonic entity, it seems, had won. Jinn are a class of supernatural creature made of smokeless fire that are mentioned in the Quran and throughout Islamic mythology. Whilst there are benevolent examples to be found, such as the genie of the lamp from the story of Aladdin, Jinn are often portrayed as malevolent, shape-shifting tricksters. These extremely powerful beings are said to have an inclination towards wrongdoing, most especially after many of them followed the evil lead of Iblis, a jinn who disobeyed orders and refused to bow to the superiority of the first man, Adam. The Islamic equivalent of Christianity's Satan, Iblis, supported by his horde of demonic jinn, vowed to lead humans astray and bring about their downfall. It could be said that this destructive vow can be felt most strongly in a desert town in Oman. Situated in the shadow of a vast mountain range, the town of Bala is home to one of the oldest fortresses in the country. From this medieval stronghold, the area's dominant tribe ruled for 3 centuries. It is the town's historic importance as a centre of military, religion and politics that supposedly made it a focus for demonic activity, for it is said that powerful people attracted powerful jinn. Stories circulated around town about the frequent appearance of powerful spirits. One local legend even claims that jinn built the 12-kilometre wall which encompasses the fort in a single night. Yet, not all supposed encounters were described as being so compassionate. It was whispered that evil jinn roamed the town, attacking and eating both dogs and humans. Far from belonging to Bala's medieval past, the prevalence of jinn in the town is still widely believed by present-day inhabitants. When interviewed by a reporter for an Omani weekly publication in 2018, a 76-year-old local shopkeeper stated that Bala is very different to other cities in the country. The old man described how the trees, rocks, mountains and even the shadows of the town are home to a plethora of jinn. When asked why, he explained how they keep an eye on everything that happens here, referring to Bala's historical importance. When searching for other stories, it is not difficult to find other equally, if not more sinister, reports of jinn in the town. One family have related how they supposedly woke each week to a low moaning noise coming from outside their house, and how each week they would find peculiar and meticulous mounds of rocks and sand placed directly beneath the window of the room where their infant son was sleeping. Another case describes the possession of a 30-year-old man by jinn. His brother claims to have found him muttering unintelligible words against a wall on several nights. An exorcist who operates in the area claims to have treated over 5,000 similarly afflicted people over the course of his 2-decade-long career. Arguably most frightening, however, is an incident described by a local man who attended the country's premier university and worked in a senior position at a nearby factory. Spontaneous fire, he claims, was the doing of jinn. In early 2015, behind his home in Bala, green flames supposedly erupted from the sand and hovered above the ground for several minutes. As the fire blazed, the man claimed he heard a chilling cackling echoing within the flames. The inferno was spontaneous and had no known cause, having happened on a cold and cloudless night in the middle of winter. The journalist who recorded his experience reported that the man's fingers shook as he recalled that night. He was clearly terrified and quickly ushered the journalist indoors, away from the site of the ominous event, lest the jinn strike again. The frequency of similarly terrifying happenings being reported in Bala is disturbing. With so many reports, it would seem that this desert town may very well be under assault by demonic forces. In the second half of the 16th century, the Spanish Jesuit missionary José de Anchieta was sent to the Portuguese colony of Brazil. As a missionary, Anchieta was heavily involved in the religious instruction and conversion to the Catholic faith of the native population. Crucial to this were his observations of and subsequent writings about the social life and culture of native people. As well as providing a rich commentary on marriage customs, family life, and religious practices, Anchieta also gave an insight into local belief in a ferocious demonic creature, the Kuru Pyrrha. Regarded as a demonic figure, the Kuru Pyrrha had long been considered a guardian of the forest by local people. It was the creature's duty to protect the forest and its inhabitants from the greed of man. It was described as being human in form, with piercing red eyes, reddish-orange hair, and jaguar-like fangs. Its most striking features, however, were its long, oversized feet. These, according to local legend, always faced the wrong way, its heels in front and its toes facing the rear. The reason for this, it was whispered, was for deception. Those wishing to avoid the creature would travel in the opposite direction to its footprints, only to find themselves wandering straight into its path. Writing on the 30th of May 1560, the Jesuit missionary described how the creature was a well-known thing, spoken of and feared by all local people. Encounters with the Kuru Pyrrha were alleged to be common for those who ventured into the forest to hunt. There, the demonic creature would beat, hurt, and sometimes even take the life of local people. According to law, a Kuru Pyrrha will prey on hunters who take more than they need from the forest, as well as those who hunt animals taking care of offspring. It is said that a sign that the infernal creature is near is its distinctive chilling growl. Once in the gaze of the Kuru Pyrrha, a hunter will rarely escape. A bizarre detail relating to this demonic creature's chosen method of attack is that its urine is said to be lethal to humans. It is told that the Kuru Pyrrha may urinate on its victim in order to cause their demise. In another traditional tale, a hunter who managed to escape by climbing a tree was forced to watch as his friend had a hole tore into his head by the hellish creature on the ground below. The monster, it is claimed, sucked the man's brain out through a hole in his skull. Undoubtedly a terrifying creature, the Kuru Pyrrha was widely feared by local people. Wishing to protect themselves from its cruel justice, natives often left offerings to the beast at the top of the highest mountain. Yet, as far as one can tell from the legends, these attempts at pacifying this forest-dwelling demon were often futile. In 1909, a Japanese man called Konyo Yanagita visited the old castle town of Tono. Yanagita was there on business. As a bureaucrat in the Ministry of Agriculture and Commerce, his work gave him many opportunities to travel throughout Japan. During this summer business trip, Yanagita rented a horse from a local innkeeper and rode around the nearby villages. His extensive fieldwork and exposure to such rural communities had fostered an interest in local village customs, and so the Japanese bureaucrat soon found himself observing a local festival. As the sun sank, men wearing masks with deer horns attached to them and young boys dressed as warriors took part in the Dance of the Deer. It was sometime during this visit to Tono that Yanagita met Kizin Sasaki, a 25-year-old aspiring writer and folklorist who had been diligently gathering the oral folklore of the area. Many of these local legends involved yokai, the supernatural monsters, spirits, and demons of Japanese folklore. Yanagita's interest was piqued, and so over the course of many evening visits, the young man recounted these stories to Yanagita, who in turn wrote them down as plainly as Sasaki described and without embellishment. In 1910, the tales and legends of Tono, which had previously only existed in oral tradition, were published and shared with the rest of Japan. Before too long, the rest of the world would know of the legends of Tono and the stories of the monsters contained within. One of the creatures mentioned in the text is the Kappa, an amphibious demon said to lurk in Japanese waterways. With its name translating to river child, the Kappa is said to be the size of a young child, with webbed hands and feet, a beak-like nose, slimy skin, and a putrid odor. Sometimes the foul creature is described as having something akin to a tortoise shell on its back. According to folklore, encounters with this water demon almost always end in tragedy, with the Kappa supposedly being responsible for sucking the life out of its victims in pursuit of a mythical organ said to contain the soul. A rather gruesome detail of these alleged attacks is that the malevolent creature will attempt to suck its victim's entrails out through an intimate area of the body. It is for this reason that it is said that one should not venture too close to the water's edge alone, for this is where the Kappa lurks and may very well drag you in and down to your demise. Despite its small stature, the Kappa supposedly has great strength, being able to drag a full-grown man into the water. Children, however, are often the demon's choice target, with many disappearances being blamed on Kappa. It is for this reason that one can still find signs today in Japan warning children not to play near waterways for fear of attacks by the demon. Fatal encounters aside, these water demons are also claimed to attack women. Occasionally, such a brutal encounter will result in the woman becoming pregnant with a ghastly half-human, half-demon creature. It is in Yanagita's Legends of Tono that one such heinous encounter is mentioned. In one of the outlying villages, a woman was described as having given birth to a child with bright red skin and a large mouth. It was said that this was the child of a Kappa. As loathsome as it was, the family were determined to be rid of the newborn creature, and so it was taken to a fork in the road, where it was set down and left. As the member of the family walked away, however, he supposedly realized that there could be some money to be made from exhibiting the bestial child. Yet, by the time he returned, it was already hiding and nowhere to be seen. Although the Kappa has become a very famous fixture within Japanese folklore, with there being numerous regional variations of the demon, its reputation in modern times has been somewhat skewed. In spite of its historic sinister reputation, the modern Kappa, like a lot of other Japanese folklore creatures, is often depicted as more cute than creepy. Kappa can even be found in advertisements and logos as light-hearted, fun characters. It is arguably this distortion that makes the life-sucking Kappa all the more terrifying. Not everyone, however, has forgotten the Kappa's true history. In 2014, the supposed mummified remains of a Kappa were put on public display for the first time. It was claimed that the remains, comprising a webbed foot and an arm, were given to an important family after the creature was shot on a riverbank in 1818. As of yet, the validity of the remains are unconfirmed. Undoubtedly, the Kappa is an integral part of Japanese folklore, and with many, albeit unverified, reports of encounters with and sightings of alleged Kappa stretching into the present day, some even consider it to be a genuine cryptid. Whatever the case may be, the legends surrounding this cruel amphibious demon are terrifying. Before I discuss my final demonic case, I would like to take a moment to talk about In Search of the Dead, my new full-feature documentary. For those of you who have not yet seen it, In Search of the Dead follows my journey of discovery in search of proof of life after death. From my trip to Romania to investigate the most haunted forest in the world, to a historic haunted manor in Scotland. Join me as I interview renowned academics and shadow experienced paranormal investigators in search of answers. It is 2 hours of thought-provoking discussion and exploration as I question not only whether or not it is possible for us to survive death, but also whether or not we are actually able to communicate with those who are now beyond the grave. If you love the paranormal and are interested in finding out more, please do click the card on screen to watch the trailer or check the description box below. In Search of the Dead is now available to rent or buy on Vimeo. Purchasing access helps support the work that my husband and I do for the Paranormal Scholar as independent creators. In Search of the Dead can also be streamed as a member of our Quill and Ink Society, both here on YouTube and on Patreon. Membership also gives you access to additional perks, including advertisement-free videos and exclusive bonus content. Please head to the description for full links. Thank you. Father Peter was an experienced exorcist. Over the course of 30 years, he had led 2 exorcisms and had assisted in 3 others, having taken over the 3rd midway through when the exorcist suffered a fatal heart attack. Thus, when he was called to perform his 3rd rite in the summer of 1965, Father Peter felt prepared. Little did he know that this would be his last exorcism, with Peter dying just a few months later. Whilst on holiday in July 1965, Father Peter received a short note from his bishop back in New York. It stated that a young lady was in urgent need of his help. When he returned to New York in August, he was made aware of the full details of the situation. The lady was called Marianne. She was 26 years old and was, as Father Peter was told, entirely subjected to an evil spirit. As a child, Marianne had struggled at school. An intelligent girl with a sharp and curious mind, she had often questioned the teachings of her religious instructors, contradicting what they regarded as unquestionable truths. This had left her alienated and alone. In her teenage years, Marianne's mind turned towards dark thoughts. Her parents were shocked and disturbed by her growing obsession with nefarious acts. She questioned morality and asked why the most unforgivable crimes were not instead regarded as an act of beauty. She was infatuated with darkness. However, it was a couple of years later, whilst Marianne was at college in 1956, that she supposedly encountered true darkness. Talking about her experiences later, she described meeting a figure who would go on to exert a great influence over her for the next 9 years. Marianne simply knew him as the Man. One day she had been studying alone when she felt suddenly, without any sense of shock, that someone was bending over her shoulder and looking at the pages of her book. When she looked up, she saw a man. Supposedly, he was a rather tall individual whose face and clothes never impressed themselves on her memory. According to her later recollection of events, the man stayed with Marianne for about an hour. Somehow he knew how isolated she felt, and perfectly described her sense of frustration at living in a world that did not seem to understand her. "They are all pushing you along the ragged edge," the man had said. He then supposedly asked Marianne if she wanted to get off it. While she could not remember everything that the man said during that hour, she claimed that his mouth, which bore a peculiar smiling expression, remained perfectly visible in her memory. Ultimately, the man had instructed her to come and find me regularly, telling her that she only had a short time to reach her true self. After this first encounter, Marianne's family and acquaintances noticed definite changes in her personality and habits. Whilst she had already had a tendency towards solitude, Marianne now rarely spoke with her parents, often disappearing from home for long periods of time without explanation. Over the next 9 years, the man became a regular fixture in Marianne's life. Under his dark influence, she changed profoundly. She had vague memories of being instructed by him, of seeing him regularly, of listening to him talk. She had accepted his authority, and so, as Marianne herself described later, her inner lifestyle altered under his influence. She was possessed. Her life, as she explained, became a marriage with nothingness. During the day, she wandered the streets and was often seen at the same park in New York City. Always she had a fixed expression, a kind of frozen smile that was only on her mouth. Her eyes were blank, her cheeks unlined, taut, her teeth were never visible through the fixed and smiling lips. Those who frequently saw her nicknamed her the Smiler. On several occasions she was seen with little wooden sticks, which she ceremoniously stood upright in the earth, tying scraps of cloth with a single bow to their base. A witness described them as looking like little crosses upside down. On another occasion, Marianne was even seen with a tall man with the same smile as hers. He was the only one able to calm her down after a sudden outburst in the park. The man appeared just as a police officer tried to calm Marianne. According to the police officer, he claimed that he was her only relative in this world. Before he took her away from the park, the pair smiling together. Marianne might have continued to live as she did if it had not been for a sudden change in her condition. It is claimed that a visit by her brother, during which he presented her with a crucifix, ended terribly. She supposedly turned white as chalk and fell rigidly to the floor. She acted as though she were in great pain. In seconds, the expression on her face had changed from dreamy to almost animal. She foamed at the mouth and bared her teeth in a grimace of pain and anger. After this, she was moved to her parents' house. From here, the possession is said to have quickly escalated, to the point where Marianne was largely bedridden and would fall in and out of a state similar to a coma. It is claimed that doctors could provide no explanation for her condition. A psychiatrist even spent 3 weeks observing her, but could only conclude that she was normal within the definition of any psychological test or understanding. The door of her room would never stay either open or shut. It was continually banging to and fro. No matter how she was washed and deodorized, and the room scoured and cleaned, it always smelled of sodden filth and a putrefaction unknown to them. Unable to find medical or psychiatric help, the assistance of the church was sought, and so Father Peter was summoned to perform an exorcism. When Peter arrived, it was obvious to him that Marianne's condition was serious, and that an exorcism should be performed as soon as possible. In his opinion, she was under the influence of a demon. An assistant priest, Father James, was present, with Marianne's father and friends of the family also there to provide help if necessary. When the priest began the exorcism, Marianne, who had before that point been silent on the bed, is reported to have opened her mouth in a narrow slit and emitted a long wailing howl, which seemed to go on without pause for breath and in full blast for almost a minute. Those in the room are said to have been thrown back physically by the force of her cry. A friend of the family who was present said that she sounded like what they imagined a wolf or a tiger would sound like when caught and disemboweled slowly. After that, Marianne was once again silent, with the smile she had become known for, the smile she supposedly shared with the man, back on her mouth, twisting her lips into a corkscrew shape. Father Peter continued to read from the Bible, commanding the possessing spirit to identify itself and leave Marianne. As the demon believed to be possessing her became more agitated, hurling abuse and personal insults at Father Peter, a chest of drawers in the room is said to have rocked back and forth, its brass handles rattling. Through Marianne, the demon revealed intimate details about Father Peter. The verbal assault, it seemed, was personal, and the strain it placed on the priest was immense. As the breakpoint, the moment when the demon reveals itself, approached, Marianne had to be held down so as not to hurt herself. The sides of Marianne's mouth were pulled back. It seemed the grimace stretched to her ears, bearing teeth, gums, tongue. A greyish foam bubbled and seeped over her lower lip and down her chin. Her eyes were open, but rolled up so far that they saw only white red-streaked patches glistening wet. Eventually, the pretense fell, and the possessing spirit was exposed. No longer claiming to be Marianne, the voice spoke directly to Father Peter. When commanded to identify itself, with Peter asking, "How shall we call you?" the voice simply replied, "Smiler, I just smile." With great effort, Father Peter was able to expel the demon and Marianne was freed. However, this came at great personal cost. The confrontation with the demon during the exorcism supposedly damaged Peter so much that he never recovered. Almost a year later, in 1966, he died. Speaking with another priest after his funeral service, Father James, the priest who had assisted during Marianne's exorcism, explained how Peter was gone, really gone, after that day. Some part of him passed into the great beyond during the final clash, he claimed. After his encounter with the Smiler, Father Peter was supposedly never the same again. Sinisterly, many years earlier, when Father Peter was a much younger man performing his first exorcism, the possessing spirit had told him that it would be back for more, and that on his third strike, his third exorcism, Father Peter would be out. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this and have not done so already, please subscribe for more of the paranormal. To never miss an upload, be sure to turn on all notifications by clicking the bell icon next to my subscription box. And if you cannot wait for more, why not watch my full feature documentary on life after death, In Search of the Dead. Click the join button here on YouTube or head over to Patreon and you can not only stream the documentary but get access to bonus unreleased footage as well. The links to where to watch are in the description. Until next time.